West Hill United is a progressive spiritual community where how you live is more important than what you believe. West Hill United is a people, a place, an idea. We are a community living out of a progressive faith, striving to make a positive difference in our own lives, the lives of others, and the world. Join us Sundays at 10:30 a.m. or connect with us at any time.
First reading today is following a story told by the late George Blondin, a respected Satu Dené leader. And it illustrates the Dené worldview that the land means more than the earth beneath our feet. Glenn Coulthard writes that in the Yellowknives Dené dialect, land, or de, is translated in relational terms as that which encompasses not only the land, but also people and animals, rocks and trees, lakes and rivers, and so on. Seen in this light, we are as much a part of the land as any other element. And this implies a reciprocal relationship among humans, animals, plants, and land. It means in order to thrive, we must all work together. The tale we are about to hear recounts an experience George Blondin's brother Edward had while hunting moose. A story told by George Blondin. Edward was hunting near a small river when he heard a raven croaking far off to his left. Ravens can't kill animals themselves, so they depend on hunters and wolves to kill food for them. Flying high in the sky, they spot animals too far away for hunters and wolves to see. They then fly to the hunter and attract their attention by croaking loudly and fly back to where the animals are. Edward stopped and watched the raven carefully. It made 2 trips back and forth in the same direction. Edward made a sharp turn and walked to where the raven was flying. There were no moose tracks, but he kept following the raven. And when he got to the riverbank and looked down, Edward saw 2 big moose feeding on the bank. He shot them, skinned them, and covered the meat with their hides. Before he left, Edward put some fat meat out on the snow for the raven. He knew that without the bird, he wouldn't have killed any meat that day. Offered as wisdom for the journey, may we walk in its light. Second reading. Denise McKay is an Inklapumak poet and artist. In her poem, Mother Earth, she tells of her relationship with the land, how the land supports her, and even though it has many scars from how it has been treated, McKay commits to solidarity with Mother Earth in gratitude for all she has received. Mother Earth by Denise McKay. She reminds me of my own mother. She has many scars that are not her fault. She has seen many battles and has endured each and every one of them. She has never stopped supporting me, though. She still continues to protect me and looks over me. She gave me the tools I need to survive. I return the favor by supporting her, protecting her, and giving her the tools she needs to survive. Most of all, I am grateful every day for the gifts my mother and Mother Earth has given me and continues to give me each and every day. offered as wisdom for the journey. May we walk in its
We
light.
walk in its light.
Is the land alive? Is the land actually a person, a living, breathing entity, just as much as you and I, or our cats and dogs and raccoons and bears and trees and ivy and grass and wheat? Is the land alive? The Gaia Hypothesis says maybe. This Gaia Hypothesis was proposed by Lynn Margulis and James Lovelock in the 1970s. And it says that the temperature of the earth and the acidity of our lakes and oceans are kept constant by feedback processes operated by all the living things on the planet. The idea is that all the plants and animals, all the living things, combine unconsciously to work as a kind of thermostat that regulates our climate and indeed our earth, much like our body temperature remains around 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, using a number of self-regulatory systems. The Gaia Hypothesis looks at the earth as a holistic system, possibly as a single entity, having a life of its own. Of course, amid all this regulation, we know that the human activity is causing the temperature to rise and is in effect breaking that feedback loop that regulates Mother Earth. And in some frightening ways, it's possible that humanity has become larger than life. We have become separated from the web of life. And if we accept that the Gaia Hypothesis has some validity, then we must look at some ways that we might shrink our presence so that we fit within the whole system. Now, to do that, it might be necessary to tease out this idea of the Gaia Hypothesis and how human beings fit into the larger whole. The Gaia Hypothesis takes its name from Gaia, who in Greek mythology is the first divine being that emerged from the chaos. Greek mythology holds that prior to the existence of any gods, the universe was chaos. People sometimes call it a void, but it wasn't an empty space. It was a definite space, but without any order. And out of this disorder emerged Gaia, who came to embody Earth. She has been connected to a kind of mother of everything, and we might be able to understand her as Mother Earth. But for some reason, we've lost contact with Mother Earth and instead have looked at her as a commodity to be exploited rather than a living relation, as we heard in the readings today. We'll often say that Indigenous people have a deep connection to the land. And Douglas Coulthard says that while that's true, it's much more than that. Instead, Coulthard says that the way we understand or know the land is important. There's a different worldview or a different way of knowing that's important. And if we are truly growing in wisdom, then we must pay attention to the thought systems of other peoples and other cultures. We affirm this in Vision Works, our value statement, which is our foundational statement here at West Hill United. And when we speak of growing in wisdom, we state explicitly, we seek wisdom in all historical eras, diverse cultures and traditions. So we might gain something by incorporating Indigenous thought into our worldview. Of course, there's no one Indigenous thought because there's a myriad of Indigenous cultures, but a common thread running through is a way of relating to the land that is very different from Western thought. And in fact, Coulthard says that in Yellowknives Dené, a dialect of Dogrib, land or day is translated in relational terms as that which encompasses not only the land, which is usually understood as material, but it also encompasses people and rocks and animals and trees and lakes and rivers and so on. And when we look at it in this light, we are as much a part of the land as any other element. Furthermore, within this system of relations, human beings are not the only constituent believed to embody spirit or agency. Ethically, this implies that humans hold certain obligations to the land, animals, plants, and lakes, in much the same way that we have obligations to other people. And if these obligations were met, then the land, animals, plants, and lakes would reciprocate, meeting their obligations to humans, thus ensuring the survival and well-being of all over time. So what Coulthard is telling us is that the Dené look at the land as not just the ground that we walk on, but as the relationships of all the being that interact with the ground that we walked on. And we're not separate from that land, but instead are a part of it, just like the moose and the raven from the story of George Blondin. Now remember, his brother Edward was out hunting for moose, but was having no luck until a raven showed up and showed him where the moose were. The raven couldn't kill the moose, which it needed for food, but it could fly high above the trees, and it could tell Edward where the moose were. The raven and Edward collaborated for their dinner, and Edward didn't take everything for himself. He left some of the meat for the raven, his neighbor. And Edward recognized the entanglement of the web of life and responded accordingly. And there's wisdom here. And I think if we're going to successfully change how we live in order to avoid the worst of the looming climate disaster, then we must consider the worldview of the land, exemplified here by the Dené and by Indigenous people in general. And to explicate this, we may need to look a little bit at the so-called Western understanding of the land. And as I said earlier, we look at it as a commodity, as a non-living thing to be exploited and used without regard to the health of the earth. We see that in the tar sands in northern Alberta and in the clear cutting of the Amazon. We see this with North Sea oil drilling and our obsession with extracting every last drop of petroleum from Mother Earth. And while this ability to do those things is new, this way of thinking kind of goes back millennia. I mean, we've seen it in the book of Genesis, as many people know, near the end of the first creation story when the Lord, the so-called Lord, grants human beings dominion over the earth. And while I might dispute the intent of this verse was to authorize sucking every last drop of oil from Mother Earth, there can be no doubt that this concept of dominion over the land has caused great harm. But this disconnection of land was also endemic to our Roman ancestors. They lost contact with the idea of Gaia as earth divine, and again, just viewed land as a commodity to gain wealth and power. And this happened long before Christianity. By the time Rome was a city-state in the mid-centuries of the first millennium BCE, acquisition of land became intrinsic to their culture. It's how they saw themselves as a people, was as acquiring more land. And they didn't want to acquire land to be in relationship with it. They wanted to gain wealth from it. So I don't know, I'm not exactly sure how this disconnection of the land actually happened, but I am drawing a connection between the creation of a big other in Gaia or in Yahweh, and thinking that perhaps this big other, that we're separated from this thing, helped us separate ourselves from the land. Or perhaps it was vice versa. But you can see the difference in the ways in which we look at the world. The Dené worldview sees the land as an integrated whole, where the health of the land is dependent on the health of all its living components. the moose and the ravens and the people and the lakes and the trees and the rivers and the mountains and the prairies are all part of the same whole. We are not separate entities that bump into one another and exploit each other for our needs. We are all one. And this worldview is similar to what is proposed in the Gaia Hypothesis, which is not a scientific fact or a confirmed thesis. But the Gaia Hypothesis acknowledges our interrelatedness, our interconnectivity, and it might point us to healthier relationships in the web of life. And this also fits with the interrelatedness that we value so much in our value statement, Vision Works. We say that with a deep sense of awe and wonder, we acknowledge life in all its diversity and complexity as an interconnected web of relationships beyond our full comprehension. We're not talking that we're separate from the land. We're acknowledging that life is relationships, that life is the entanglements among us. And we go on to say, we recognize our place within this web of life and that we are all affected by natural forces and human choices, and in turn have an impact on the natural world and the human community, helping or harming by our actions and our inactions. And it's hard to deny, we can't deny, that we are currently harming the planet through our actions. And what it's telling us, perhaps, is that our relationship with the land is broken or damaged. And it tells us that we must change our behavior. But luckily, we can see a path to better behavior. Through our values and vision works, affirmed by the Gaia Hypothesis and confirmed by Dené thinking, we can see a path forward. And you can see how the Dené worldview is a better way to look at the world in the face of the looming climate crisis. And as the threat to our planet grows, understanding our world and our place in it affects how we respond. How the understanding of the relationality, of viewing ourselves as simply a part of the whole, might change our behavior in a positive way. That we might learn to live in rhythm with the web of life instead of trying to dominate it. Like the poet Denise McKay said, "She gave me the tools I need to survive. I return the favor by supporting her, protecting her, and giving her the tools she needs to survive." And so I hope we can look at this not as a scary thing that is looming and coming to crush us, but I hope we can look at this as an opportunity. That we are in this together with the land, all the land and everything in it. With the cats and the dogs and the raccoons and the bears and the trees and the ivies and the grass and the wheat and the lakes and the rivers and the oceans. The land is alive, and we are a part of it. And if we can embrace that, we will thrive. We can't solve these problems today, but we can resolve to. We can resolve to solve these problems with love and joy. And if not optimism, then with hope. Peace.
Become a sustaining champion of West Hill United's work by committing to an automatic monthly donation. Learn more or donate now through Canada Helps.